Are Christians gullible? Duh. But there are some of them, not a lot, mind you, but some who at least put some work into thinking about the things that they believe. But only the parts that aren't completely faith-based. Those never get any effort at all. Let's look at more of that today, because it's no more impressive now than it ever has been. We're on to the very last video with Nate Sala complaining about not being taken seriously by science. Well, maybe that's because you're not doing science. It's always an excuse for why it's not really your fault, isn't it? And that's hardly a surprise. This is also not going to be as long as the last couple of videos for reasons I'll go into later. I'm sure that's going to come as a relief to some people after the last one, which was really long. So, can Nate bring it home and prove that he's a wise disciple after all? Let's dive right in and see.
Then methodological naturalists shoulder a burden to support their claim that this is the way to study the origin of the universe and to debate the existence of God. That what everyone should be doing when we evaluate metaphysical issues is to only utilize naturalistic methods.
Well, that started right in the middle of a thought, didn't it? Now, these things get cut up pretty much arbitrarily because I realize just how long it's getting and I just want to stop. So, if you remember the last time, he was talking about methodological naturalism, and he's assuming that science just arbitrarily picked the natural world as its guide, probably with some crazed conspiracy theories mixed in. However, that's not it. The natural world is all that we have ever had any evidence for. We're not picking it arbitrarily, we're going where the only evidence that exists points. Going back to an example that I've used throughout these videos, just assuming that the butler did it, that doesn't really work if there isn't a butler. But the butler had to do it. But that doesn't make any sense. The natural world has been proven. If you want us to accept the supernatural, then you have to prove that too, to the same degree as we've already done with the natural. And you'd better get on that, because just because you really like the idea, just because you like flapping your lips and talking about it, that doesn't mean anything. You have to back it up with evidence, not rely on your own ignorance. So let's get back to it.
And so now we're back to the conversation about shouldering burdens. Are we really interested in having difficult and thoughtful discussions about the existence of God? Or does one side just want to make the other side do a bunch of work?
You have to do the same work to back up your claim that we've already done. The problem is, science has been at this for centuries, and you're just getting started. You have all of your work ahead of you to do. Unfortunately, we know from experience that the religious aren't interested in doing any actual work. They just want to believe. And that's why when we point out that they have a lot of work to do, they just make excuses. Where's your evidence, we ask? It's in the Bible. That's what they inevitably respond. Well, how do you know that the Bible is true? Faith, of course, but faith isn't a valid way to look at the world and gain any demonstrable insight. That's what we're looking for. Demonstrable. You have to prove it actually happened the way that you describe, and they simply can't do that. Until they can come up with a way to show that their claims are factually correct, something that they're not even trying to do, we have no reason of any kind to take them seriously. They want us to change the methodology to make it less coherent so they can slip their theology in. No thanks. That's not going to happen.
If we want to say one side should do all the work and that side should be the Christian theist, then that in itself should be its own debate.
Nope. Because, like I said, we've already done our work. Now it's your turn. But you're trying to get out of it by claiming it's not fair. Well, I don't know where the hell you got the idea that life was fair, because it's not. Either put up or shut up. It's really not that hard.
Here's a resolution for that. Methodological naturalism is the only legitimate method to evaluate the existence of God. A lot of people are going to immediately recognize a category error in the mix, but whatever. I mean, go after it and make it your own, right? Make your case.
We have. Now, if you'd like to present some other demonstrable methodology for examining the supernatural, feel free. We'll look at it on its own merits. Yet, that's never what the religious do, right? How do you know that the supernatural exists? We just do. Well, how do you test for it? We have faith. That's not a test. That's just an assertion, and science doesn't work by assertion. If you want science to take your unsupported claim seriously, you have a couple of questions to answer. What is the supernatural? Not what it's not. What is it? What's it made of, and how does it operate? What specific rules does it follow, and how do you know any of that? Most importantly, though, how can we test for it objectively to see if you're right? If you can't come up with that last one, especially the last one, you've lost, because nobody gives a damn about your claims. We care about your proof. Got any? I didn't think so.
But guess what? That debate is not taking place, as far as I can tell. No, instead, the claim is just thrown around there by some folks. They just go, well, this is the way it should be done. You know, some folks try to say it like this: because this is the way we investigate other things, this is the way it should be done. When we talk about God, we need to do it this way.
Then feel free to propose your own system that can objectively demonstrate that God is real. Because we've been asking for that for centuries, and you know what we've gotten in response? Crickets. Excuses. You can't put God to the test. It says so in the Bible. But I don't care what your stupid book says. If you want me to accept that your deity is real, you need to come up to my standards. I am not going to go down to yours. Virtually every religion says this, because virtually every religion, at least the theistic ones, realize eventually that they have to shelter their imaginary friends from real-world investigation. If they allow people to check to see if their gods are real, then people are going to stop shoveling money into their churches, because people are going to realize what a massive scam it all is. Nobody's going to just believe. And if that's what your requirement is, you've already lost. So figure out if you want to be credible or if you just want to believe. It's all on your shoulders. Make the call and stick to it. Get back to us when you've made up your mind, because you can't have it both ways.
Except, I just pointed out, that's not the way all of science is done. The bottom line is, I think all kinds of debates should take place, and I think sometimes Christians should shoulder the burden of proof. They should make their case in support of the resolution, and the negative team should go after them hard. But for all the reasons I just offered, laying out the definitions in the previous videos about presumption and the various burdens in debate, now you know a little bit more about why I said it's absolutely appropriate for non-theists to also shoulder the burden of proof.
Now, I don't know if you remember the last video, but I pointed out that all of his examples were agent-based things and nature-based things. That's not exactly how he put it, but you get the basic idea. All of them relied on things that could be demonstrated to exist first. We don't believe that the unicorn butler did it. You'd have to show that there was a unicorn butler first. Well, there really is, but it's just invisible and completely undetectable. You have to have faith that it's there. Yeah, no, go away. You are not going to impress anybody with your faith-based nonsense, whether you're talking about unicorn butlers or gods. This is right back to bald rationalizations. It's ignoring the obvious problems with their side while making up empty excuses for why they think everybody else is to blame for their own failures. This is not how adults work, but this is how the religious work, isn't it? Why can't they get that through their heads?
Now you know why I've also said in the past, like with regard to the God of the Gaps controversy, Christians are not the ones who created those gaps. In order to challenge the Christian worldview, you have to adopt presuppositions that themselves need to be discussed and debated before they are adopted. And before we can actually get into a meaningful debate about God's existence, you need to talk about that first.
And you're still wrong. You are the one proposing things without evidentiary support. It's not us, it's you. When we point this out, you just make excuses and feign anger that you actually have to present something that we all know that you can't present. Then you just change the subject. We're not assuming anything. We're asking that you present anything that you have objectively verifiable evidence for. You're the ones arguing for something completely different, something entirely without credible proof, and you're trying to pretend that somehow this is something that we're doing wrong. No, that's you. Either meet the standards that exist or demonstrate why those standards should change. Your fifis don't mean a thing. You have to do a whole lot better than you're doing, and I don't understand why you aren't. So why don't you figure it out and give it a shot, and we'll all sit here and wait. This is apparently going to be a much shorter video because he spends the last 3.5 minutes on channel business and making money because, of course he is. Now, that's fine and all, but because I don't watch these videos up front, I had no idea that his 18-minute video was actually 14.5 minutes long. So let's take a couple of minutes to discuss where Nate and others like him go completely wrong. First, they have no demonstrable methodology for their beliefs. You just have to believe. But can't the same thing be said for any woo belief? You just have to believe in Bigfoot. Why? Because you have to have faith. But faith isn't a demonstrable answer to anything. That's just wishful thinking, and so long as that's all that Christianity is, and that goes for any religion or Bigfoot belief or anything else, then they'll continue to be an irrational laughingstock because nobody ought to believe like that. Nobody cares if that hurts your feelings. It's still the case. They are looking for a way to be on an even footing with science without comprehending why science works the way that it does. It doesn't operate on faith. It operates on demonstrable facts. And when science asks the religious, well, where are your facts? They've got nothing at all to present. Of course, they can't admit that, so they run around with the goalposts and blame science for being just too hard for the religious to deal with. Well, of course it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. Only the very best ideas can qualify. That's kind of the point. The one thing they never ask themselves is why religion is just so bad at it. They don't understand why science works the way that it does, and let's be honest, they don't really care. They just want to be seen as a credible option, whether they actually are or not. This all comes down to fifis like everything else in religion, and Nate here is essentially asking, why don't you make an exception for us? Because you haven't warranted it. It's no different than the UFO crazies whining that nobody takes them seriously, because they can't prove that anything they believe is true. This entire video has been nothing but ignorance on display and a desire for their feelings to be coddled. But that's not how reality works, is it? There's a reason that science works the way that it does. It's designed to separate the ideas that have intellectual merit from the ones that don't. It has high standards for good reasons, and it doesn't care about your fifis, nor should it. But that's not fair. That's not a valid reason to get your shot at the big time. You have to earn it, and whether they like it or not, the religious never have, and let's be honest, they never will. They haven't even tried. They need to get past their faith first. Faith is never going to get you anywhere remotely close to credibility, and if that's all you've got, as it clearly is when it comes to religion, then all the complaining and whining and stamping your feet in the world, that's not going to make a difference. You have to do better than that. You have to be better than that. It's really a shame that these people aren't, nor do they have any real interest in improving. And that's why religion will always fail, because they're just too dumb to do otherwise.